All right, councillors, we will reconvene. It's 10:55. Okay, next up, we have John Smulders. This is on page 121 of your agenda packs. Right, welcome, John. And to speak, you just need to hit the right button, the right-hand side button, and wait till it turns red. There you go. And you've got 5 minutes to speak.
Fantastic.
Oh, you're welcome to sit if you would.
That's fine. It's okay.
I'm just hoping that sometimes the mics, you have to be in fairly good, close proximity in order for those online to hear.
Okay. Can they, am I clear? Can you hear? You all hear me? That's fantastic. Seems I'm the first up. I was hoping to see somebody else do this before me.
We're a friendly bunch, John.
Fantastic.
No worries.
Just need to start with something that I've found for you just to get the mood going. This is the male kiwi. A little bit more Jurassic Park, female kiwi. My submission is about the Waikato Regional Council adding the prospect of looking to reintroduce our native iconic symbol, the kiwi, back into our significant natural areas, parks, reserves. That's what I'd like to see. There he is. One kiwi. Just a representative of the potential. Okay. You will have seen the pictures of this bird in our Defence Force uniforms and equipment. We almost even had a national flag with this symbol on it. You'll see it on TV, on Latitude Homes advertising. If you were around in Hamilton City in the 60s, you may have even heard this sound because they were here then. Currently, the only way you will hear or see this wonder of nature is in a zoo or a ring-fenced area. You might get to see them in Wellington. They've made great strides into introducing them there. They've got 100 of our kiwi bred in our Mangatautri sanctuary down there. You may be aware of many volunteer groups around the region who are busy baiting and trapping possums and rats with the hope of helping New Zealand reach its goal of predator-free 2050. This is only 26 years away. One thing we also need to take into consideration is the millions of feral cats roaming our country, decimating our native wildlife. We also need to consider how we protect our companion animals, the cute and cuddly kittens to become cats. Please note, feral cats are not the cuddly house cat. They are very similar, and if hungry and allowed to roam free at night, they too can become like a feral cat. Growl. Okay, that's what happens. In conclusion, I challenge each one of you, put your big boy pants on and consider drafting some rules for cat management in the Waikato. If you note in my submission, I refer to several councils who have already put cat management plans in place, and the Forest and Bird Society submission to government for cat management. Instead of taking on board the current policies of desex, chip and homing of stray, wild and feral cats, we should lead the way by taking this to the next level. Dare I mention it, but euthanizing these animals is the most effective control. I am reluctant to bring this up, but we do it for terminally ill humans. Unwanted life forms yet to be classified as humans and babies. We cull ducks, swans, goats, deer. We manage dogs, but as yet there is no plan to manage cats. Bring back the Kiwis. Any questions?
Thank you. I've got Councillor Clarkson and Councillor Cookson. Councillor Clarkson.
Well, thank you for your great presentation. You really got our attention. Well done. Are you aware that the National Party and the Green Party are currently working on developing a new piece of legislation relating to cat control and management in New Zealand? It's being led by Barbara Kuriga, the MP from Taranaki.
All right.
And Celia Wade-Brown is working with her. So it's a cross-party attempt to deal to this issue. I guess I'm mentioning it because the question is, who is the right body to be leading the charge on developing, you call them rules? And while we have various responsibilities, I think the responsibility at central government and at city council and district council is even greater in relation to cat control. And so the effort might be better spent in that space. So I'd just like to suggest to you, you might want to make contact with Barbara Kuriga. And if there's something you can do to help her in the process of getting that across the line, that might be a good way to go. Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree with that, and I look forward to the government legislating to provide guidance around that area. And tomorrow we'll be submitting the similar submission to the Hamilton City Council. But the Waikato Regional Council does have lots of natural areas where they could look to introduce kiwi.
Yeah, that's right. But the rule development that I'm talking about, the development of rules. Yep. So the rules, for example, for the Hamilton City, which have already been developed in relation to the Peacock suburb to the south of the city, and also some cat-free suburbs in Raglan that have been already designated. The rule development may not be best placed with the regional council.
Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, thank you for your submission. Just support what Councillor Clarkson has said, but totally understand where you're coming from. I'm a rural dairy farmer living on the Poratahuna Road, right next to the Kaipu Peat Dome, and the amount of cats that are just left on the side of the road when people go on their holidays to the beach, and they invade our property and then eat they kill all the bird life is amazing, and it's a real issue. And how our communities need to respond and start controlling this overwhelming amount of cats. I don't think unless you're rural, you actually understand how bad it is. So I just want to acknowledge that it is a serious issue, and that I see it every day on my dairy farm. And they're out there eating all the fantails and all the other little native birds that we've got there. Because of most probably California quail has disappeared. We haven't got no California quail anymore. That disappeared about 20 years ago. So this issue isn't today. This is a issue that's going on for about 30 years. Yep. Yeah, so thank you for that. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your submission. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you.
We've got Bill Murphy online. I hear you're online, Bill.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Thank you for joining us. Councillors, this is page 251 of your agenda packs. Over to you, Bill. You've got 5 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. I've made a submission on the Regional Development Fund, and my intention with doing that is to see if the experience that I have with these types of funds and investments might be of help for council in their deliberations about this fund and its future. First off, I want to congratulate the council for establishing the Regional Development Fund. I know it's been difficult for council to dispense those funds, and I certainly understand. I feel your pain. It is not an easy thing to do, to invest smartly. That is for sure. So just a little bit of background. So I established Enterprise Angels, which is the angel investment group for the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty, back in 2007. Enterprise Angels has 4 funds, has invested 65 million in over 120 early stage companies. So I have that experience. And then 6 years ago, I established one of New Zealand's first impact investment funds that is focused on risk-adjusted return, so financial return, however, only in projects that drive social and environmental change. That's a $22 million fund with over $40 million of funds under management. The primary investors in that fund are Well Energy Trust, Bay Trust, and Tauranga Energy Consumer Trust. And then in addition to that, a range of other individuals and trusts. What many parties do is they use our expertise to assess investment opportunities, either by investing directly in the fund itself. So in the case of organizations like a Trust Waikato or a Well Energy Trust, they don't have the staff, they don't have the experience to do direct investing. Therefore, they utilize a fund like ours in order to do that. There are also funds, organizations, individuals, corporates who sit outside our fund and co-invest alongside us. So in other words, when we see an investment opportunity that we think is going to drive economic development as well as social or environmental change, we'll do due diligence on it. We'll negotiate the terms for it. And this is Purpose Capital, and I'm saying we. We'll then make an investment commitment to it. And essentially what we're saying then to other parties is the table is set. The work's been done. We're committed to investing. Would this suit you? Would this fit in with what you're trying to do? That's really the critical issue. And you ask an awful lot of council staff, just like you also ask an awful lot of community groups like the ones that I mentioned, or anyone that doesn't have years of experience in investing into projects. You ask an awful lot of those people to have the confidence to step forward and, in most cases, turn down those opportunities to invest, but in some cases actually invest and utilize that money. Purpose Capital has invested nearly all of its $22 million now. It has one more investment to make in its current fund. That has taken 4 years to do. And so it's not something where the money would be dispensed quickly. But maybe I'll just wrap up now because I'm not sure how I'm going in terms of time. So I really hope that the Regional Council will keep a fund like this in place. Grant funding alone is yesterday's way of funding environmental and social change. Of course, it is still critically important that council and other organizations are there to provide grant funding and make investment as the council itself. But increasingly, impact investing and that type of investing is a way of drawing in funds to drive environmental and social change that goes beyond what we can do with grant funding and other forms of council funding. So with that, I'll finish off and see if there's any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I appreciate you speaking to your submission. Just wanting to clarify, because what we see in our agenda is that you have selected that council discontinues the RDF.
Um, I, well, I'm not sure why I picked that option. I certainly want to see the council continue the IDF. However, my recommendation would be for the council to partner with a fund like a Purpose Capital Fund, or like organizations or people that have a lot of experience in investing, and partner and invest in a fund like that, or partner alongside a fund like that, as a way to really get those funds out into the community and being used.
Great, thank you. Any other questions, councillors?
Kia ora, Bill. It's Councillor Jennifer Nicol here. I just want to say
Hi.
thank you for your presentation, and that you are working in the investment, impact investment space, and bringing that expertise to us. I really appreciate it. So, and thanks for taking the effort to make the submission so that we could all hear it, and especially through hearing as well.
Great. Appreciate your submission and your time today, Bill. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Our next presenter was Jeffrey Robinson, but as I understand it, he is not in attendance at this time. So we can move on to Barry Quayle, a familiar face in this chamber. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you.
So councillors, this is page 207 of your agenda pack.
Good morning, councillors. Morena. I value the sanctity of councils to reach their own decisions about the way forward without undue influence from past councillors or chairmen. However, I feel that council will benefit from my past work on this council and the insights I've gained from that experience in reference to one matter in your LTP, the Regional Development Fund. Government ministers of both the past government and those now in government have made the same plea to this region when it comes to infrastructure and support funding from central government, or indeed partnership approaches. From a local government perspective, central government seeks one overall listing of key priorities. The message was clear that 10 dispirited messages from the Waikato region was not helpful in gaining government confidence in your plans. All other major regions, including our neighbouring Bay of Plenty, have utilised very successfully the vehicle of a regional development agency to give focus to their infrastructure and regional development needs, both to ministers of government, ministries, business, investors, and offshore interests. There is clear evidence of their success in this field throughout New Zealand. Our region's regional development agency, Te Waka, which is comparatively in its infancy and has comparatively low levels of funding support, has still managed to get some runs on the board. Te Waka needs to be supported, and yes, you need to expect more from its work program. So negotiate some agreed development outcomes for 3-year cycles and utilise their reach into central government and the business community. This way, we can get our region's slice of government support so that local authorities of the region are facing lack of due weight in their objectives advocating for infrastructure support. I'm not a subscriber to the notion that councils alone themselves are effective at delivering on regional development initiatives. Thank you. Ngā mihi.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Marr.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, Barry. We've had a number of discussions with Te Waka over the last 18 months or so, but one of the things that seems to hamstring them from sourcing other funding is the makeup of their board and their trust, etc. Do you have any input on or ideas around that sort of model and how it could be best serving us?
I think it's important for you to set, objectives, performance criteria. That is where you should come in strongly in that view. In my view and my work with them, they have indicated to me that they see change is important in their workspace. They have indicated that looking forward, they need to do that to really elevate their game and to bring further investment. So now is not the time to desert the ship. Now is the time to actually get it rolling forward in a much stronger way.
So would you see that as implying that they're possibly an advisor to their board or a person elected to their board? Not necessarily a councillor, but you need skills in that area. So
certainly you've heard even before my speaking here, you've heard there are skills in the community. There are skills in the business community. I know that Te Waka has now reached into a number of aspects of the community. They've been working hard on that area, and I think they can bring, if you would indicate to them that you wanted to see greater strength brought to the board, I think they would positively respond to that.
excellent, thank you. And just finally, I think one of the things we find, or some of us councillors find frustrating, is that sort of silos of the other types of organisations. And so we see examples of some better models around the country where the groups are under the same umbrella and working together. And I believe that's possibly a way forward as well.
Councillor, I think you've struck on a very important chord, and that is silos. Silos are evident in a number of areas where regional development touches. So that's why we need a vehicle like Te Waka that can actually work to break down some of that cycle mentality. Yeah, silos are definitely holding back this region. So thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Barry.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you again, Barry. Yeah, thank you for your submission. You appreciate your expertise in this area of economic development. In our consultation document, we mentioned that we thought about a targeted rate for commercial or business community, but we ruled that out. Holding that thought alongside sustainable funding moving forward for an EDA, how would you see that playing out in the long term?
I think the move towards, I would take this approach. For the next 3 years, the council should set the model that it is most comfortable with for the next 3 years. But then I'd be looking to move towards that commercial rate aspect. Going forward, if you look at the Bay of Plenty model, it's been very effective where they have a commercial rate. They are backed strongly by the community, the business community over there. So my approach would be select the one that best suits you now at the moment because you have a lot of pressures on you, and then going forward move to the commercial rate after 3 years.
Thank you.
Councillor Mahuta.
Tēnā ku Barry Ngamahinui kia koe. Probably some of the considerations for Te Waka, and I agree we're in the early stages of its life, is how can we direct it so we can see more of the sub-regional as opposed to the Hamilton-centric rest of the donut is Waikato kind of. So if you were to recommend, well, I guess building into your experience, how would you recommend that into the Te Waka board? How would you frame that?
I think
concern for the region.
They have been hamstrung by a lack of funding. If you compare their funding with any other regional development agency, they are less than 30% of any other agency. In fact, some are even getting up to 7 to 8 times what funding they have here. So that ability to penetrate and link in on a wider basis, they I know they value the strengths that they have with iwi and the association, but they aren't able to drill further on that matter because of the lack of resource. So they're virtually on a shoestring budget at the moment. What we need to do is really move that forward and take the experiences elsewhere. So thanks for your question, Councillor.
I am running short on time now. That's the thing, isn't it? There's either lots of time or no time. Councillor Kneebone.
Just a quick one, Barry. It feels to me like I think our submissions endorsed this. There still isn't a huge amount of awareness out in the community of the existence of Te Waka. And, as Warren noted, we talked about commercial rating, but it feels to me like it's a little bit too early at the moment. I'm not even convinced that the commercial sector understand it yet.
That's why I'm going for 3 years' time. Look to that. But yes, the branding is important on anything. When you're going to the community, the branding, they have not had, let's say, a big branding program that can establish what it is and what it's about. But if you look at the successes and we're able to roll out what has happened in every other region, they've got a bigger slice of the pie comparatively than this region has. We've been underdone in terms of getting our slice of the cake on development. So we really need to push hard in that area. And so I fully support that. Thank you.
Councillor Clarkson.
Yeah, just a quick one, Barry. Look, thanks for your presentation. I really agree with your comments around silos, but I'm just wondering about intervention logic and where the silos exist and who is capable of breaking the silos.
Yeah.
Are you confident that a group of this size with this amount of funding, even if it went for another 3 years, can achieve the breakdown in the silos, or is that a responsibility of another body that you might like to consider that should be doing that?
Yeah, where everybody rushes to setting up a new body or a new entity, and then it has all its own
I mean, a
issues.
new existing body.
Yeah.
Isn't there somebody there already that should be working on that?
My approach is this: Te Waka has been around long enough. It's understood throughout New Zealand and more particularly by central government what they are about, and they're about gelling the voices of a region to create, that single voice that the government wants to hear. So we do need that, let's say, the model that government recognises. If we set up something else, if you look at, for example, the mayoral forum, that won't have necessarily the same weight in Wellington as what we've achieved on the national scene with regional development agencies. They are seen more of a political wing than the broader aspects that a regional development agency brings.
Thank you.
Great. And then very quickly,
Yeah, just briefly.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Barry, you've mentioned the need for setting strong KPIs and a 3-year funding regime. In discussion with Hamilton City just before, the idea is that you can also at an annual plan level review to see whether those have been done effectively, and if they're not, you alter your funding.
Exactly right. You can have 3-year funding cycles, but you must have the KPIs and be checking them off as you go, because you really need to know they're on track. So a funding cycle that's annual is a waste of time for anything. Essentially, you need 3-year cycles, but you also need those checks and balances along the way. So absolutely right, Councillor.
And just finally clarifying, you've said that you want to continue the Regional Development Fund, but you actually mean you want to continue funding Te Waka?
Well, I see both as important. I do recognise by a previous speaker who said it's difficult for councils to fund it. But when you dismantle or have an agency that's not funded to its full capability, it should be bringing you potentials for co-partnership and investment. It should be doing that. It doesn't have the resource to do that. So your fund has been sitting there, but really Te Waka hasn't had the ability to leverage and come back to you with the opportunities. And you've heard the other speakers with the same view.
Great. Hey, thank you very much, Barry, for joining us today, and thank you for your submission and your presentation. All right, we'll now move to Waikato Housing Initiative. So we've got Lale joining us today. Welcome, Lale.
This is a 1027 submission, Chair.
Oh, this is 1027, page 1027 on the agendas. Thank you for that, Councillor Nebo. Appreciate it. Lale, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Mā loro sui fua maua ma langi mā. Thank you very much for the opportunity to hear us today. I'm speaking on behalf of the Waikato Housing Initiative, and I'm not going to reread the paper, if that's okay. I'll just speak to the key points that we want to share with some of probably the new faces that are at the table and some of the old faces. So I've had the privilege of being in this space for almost 10 years now. We heard about Te Waka earlier. Te Waka and the Housing Initiative were two challenges that were thrown to the Waikato Plan table almost 8 or 9 years ago in this space, when we were all sitting there talking about how it was going to be led. So Dallas Fisher and myself ended up picking up the two offerings of the Economic Development Challenge and the Housing Challenge. And that was to represent the region in that space. And so the Waikato Plan as a forum, fundamentally important for the discussions held across the region, especially when talking about housing. Now, I know the region don't specifically deal to the housing aspects, but you are definitely a contributor to the key aspects for affordable housing within the region. You are the only voice that speaks to the region out of the 11 TAs that we've spoken to and been with and shared our thoughts about. And so in this room, we've been able to welcome central government, different housing providers, both national and international, to be able to talk about the challenges that they're seeing in the same area. So for the Housing Initiative itself, for those that don't know, again, it is a cross-continuum group from homeless all the way through to the private sector. And so that includes the emergency housing people, the homeless in that space, government and communities, as well as private developers in that whole housing continuum. So when we have these broad discussions that we have regularly over the last few years, they're a room that is full of 60 to 100 odd people, all with differing biases, but all there to listen about how we can actually move forward for affordable housing in that space. And so it is definitely a coalition of the willing. Many of people have different hats that sit at that table, including myself in that space. But the biggest focus that we've all agreed to is how do we develop affordable housing when 90% of the housing stock is controlled by the private market. And we've currently and continue to hear about Kāinga Ora, who controls maybe less than 5% of that housing stock in the media consistently, knowing that it only provides for public housing and social housing. But what about the rest of the people that are still looking for affordable homes before you enter that full market? So the Housing Initiative for the community has been one of the only places to have a broad discussion with that cross-continuum membership, but being heard at one place. And to keep it very simple, it was easy to come to the Waikato Plan and speak to 40 odd members that represented different councils and different government bodies, as well as different community bodies. And so we were able to bring 10 to a dozen members to speak about these issues consistently, so that you as the council members could hear from the continuum itself, not just from one voice in that space. And so with that forum not there at the moment, the Housing Initiative was let go about 1.5 years ago to go and do its own thing and find its own money in that space and its own support. And it's been pretty hard work. Hard work when you see the various TAs now with new councillors and new mayors in some spaces, effectively reinvent some of those discussions that we've been through over the last 8 years. And so disconcerting to see all that effort go into things that have been done before. What hurts even further is that when consultants are asked to come and collect that information that the community groups have pulled forward themselves and be paid for that service, even though everyone gave their time to put it together in the first place. And because we don't have that environment to come and talk to you about these things, we end up talking through consultants and other representatives for work that the community has already done itself. And so when we talk about an answer to this problem, I think Barry hit it on the head previously, and you've mentioned it again, Bruce, around silos. Housing at the moment is just another version of those silos. Now, when the IAF, the government fund that came out $1 billion last year to support affordable housing, 75% of those submissions were for infrastructure, not for housing. They were to enable land, they were to enable the infrastructure, they were to enable being able to start building those houses. And in a lot of those cases, from an environmental perspective and a cultural perspective, those items weren't considered well enough in that space. So when we talk about housing as a continuum and housing as a system, very clearly the WHI does not build houses, its members do. But it will hold the conversation across the continuum to ensure those that have and those that have not have the genuine discussion about how we can all have something. So before we take some questions, I just reflect a little bit on these numbers. We're about to release the stocktake, the updated stocktake for the region. It's about to confirm that we've done over 20-odd thousand products with regard to housing of some nature over the last 4 to 5 years. It will also say that it's almost about $2.8 billion that's been put into the economy in and around that housing piece. And from an affordable homes perspective, less than 1% has been delivered in an affordability target. And so we continue to do a lot of housing within the region, especially if we're looking for, back in 2018, we said 75,000 homes required with a high level of migration and growth for the region by 2043. We're making pretty good progress into delivering those homes. We're just not delivering enough of the homes that our communities need. And the Regional Council has a big part to play in that process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lale. I suppose just, I do note in your submission that you do make a comment around funding support. Did you want to elaborate on that at all while you're here?
Sure. So from a funding perspective, Regional Council has supported us mainly in kind in that space with putting together the management and the resource teams that's within the organisation, or that is within the organisation, in order to help us. We receive sponsorship and funding from our philanthropic communities, mainly Well Energy Trust. Trust Waikato are there, also supporting. And then we also have a couple of privates that have also put some money in. So what we've tried to do, sorry, I've also forgotten Crown. So through Crown agencies, they've also put funding in to help support this. So what we've tried to do is to reflect the continuum in our funding piece. So $500,000 is what we're looking for to be able to continue to run the organisation, to keep the glue to the region together. That would have a large element of it that is council connected. So whether it's regional, city, district, or the other TAs in that space, we would expect the majority of that benefit to be going back to those organisations, to go back to the affordable housing communities.
Great, thank you for that. It's you mentioned the mayoral forum earlier, and certainly that is the one agreed priority around that entire table, is that housing is an issue within this region. So thank you for elaborating on that.
Good, thank you.
I've got Councillor Marr and then Councillor Dunbar-Smith. Councillor Marr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Lale, for your report. Obviously, my comments are a little bit like Pam's around that 300,000 you're seeking. So just a time frame over that, but also recognising that the delivery of low-cost housing is really important in my Thames Coromandel area. But we've heard just talk recently with Te Waka, and so what I'm asking, I guess, is KPIs around that. So you know, I need due diligence back to my ratepayers. So how would you see that falling out?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor. The opportunity with the data lake that we've now pulled together, which holds effectively the stock take, the live stock take of housing being developed within every TA at the moment. We would hope that you'd be able to go into there and watch the progress of housing being delivered, but more importantly, that housing which is defined as affordable in it. And so using that particular tool without creating another KPI separate report is an easy reference point for us. And then the other reference point is the ability to understand the program of funding that might come from central government with a coordinated voice to help each of the regional players in that space. So when we've had the ministers in here previously, we've pitched to them about what the region needs, not what any individual TA needs. And then we've said, with that big pie, these are the areas that are either already underway with the program, or these are the areas that will need support in those programs. And so that's how we've then distributed effectively the support for the different areas at the same time. So we would see that being part of the data lake summary.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
You are pitching here for 200,000 plus, including in-kind support. Previously, there was a submission from Waikato Housing Initiative for, I think, $100,000. So do you have an idea of how much our in-kind support is currently worth?
I would say $100,000 when I look at the difference between the two.
Right, good. And secondly, have you submitted to other territorial authorities, given that they often have greater control over housing, and have you had any feedback from those so far?
Yes, so we're working on those at the moment, the biggest of them being district. So of the 3,500 to 4,000 homes delivered around the region per annum over the last 4 to 5 years, the majority of those, 3,000-ish, are between district and Hamilton City. And so there's a bit of focus in around those two, but the hope is to get back in front of the mayoral forum and to then just confirm the commitment that we made to them with regard to the challenge. So hopefully get back to the TAs, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we need to close it there. Councillor Strange, you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lale, for your written submission and your coming in today as well. We appreciate you making the time. Yeah, also appreciate you reminding us of the Waikato plan and how, yeah, what an important forum that was for the wider region. So yeah, thank you for your time and yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Cheers for that.
Kia ora.
All right, we'll now move to ACRE. We've got Anna Casey-Cox and Shepherd Isaac.
Yeah.
Yes. Welcome. I believe we've got a presentation. I think it's up. Over to you.
Just some photos. Yeah. Tēnā koutou katoa, to Chair Pamela, Deputy Chair Bruce, and Tipa Kataraina. Kataraina's online. Oh, and to all the councillors. Ko Anna Tukuingua. I'm presenting to you today with Shepherd. We're both part of the ACRE committee, which meets here monthly. Basically, it's an advisory committee that's been in existence since 1989, and the membership extends across the region, actually. We've got members from up Colville, Manaia, Whaingaroa and Taupo as well. So it's a unique group, I guess, in that respect, because we do span the region and we are all connected in various ways into, I guess, flex roots action on the ground. So we're an opportunity for staff here to come and connect to talk through their work. and we often have questions in regards to what the regional council is doing and want to find out more so that we can share that back into our communities. A couple of our newer members, Craig Solomon from the Ngāti Marurunanga has just joined us, which is really awesome. He's had quite a lot of experience in the mussel industry, which is kind of unique, but he also has the insights of his hapu that he brings to the table as well. And Rachel Thompson from the Kids Greening Taupo Initiative has also joined us. So it's great to see the new membership coming in because it signals, I guess, an interest in advocacy. And I'm sure you're all aware that sometimes advocacy isn't the easiest thing to retain or have energy for, but it's something that ACRE has been committed to for a very long time. So in our submission, you'll see really a lot of support for what the Regional Council is proposing to do and to invest into, in particular in regards to monitoring and research. We really appreciate the support that the Regional Council offers into the community, and Shepherd's work has certainly benefited from the advice of Regional Council staff through the years. And he'll talk a little bit about how important that education is a little later on. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things, I guess. In particular, Te Huia. We understand just in the last couple of days that the likelihood of the recommendation from NZTA to reduce the funding is quite high. So our encouragement is that with that potential reduction, if it does happen, that we work together, the Regional Council works together with the community to figure out a way forward, because it's such an important service. And I think I've been to a lot of meetings of late where people have talked passionately about how important that service is to our region, and it's a diverse range of people that really support that train service. So ACRE would really encourage us to be creative and to look for opportunities to continue that if the government does pull back. And in terms of the natural heritage targeted rate, it was great to see the support from the community back around that proposal that you put out. And I really want to thank you for actually testing the water on that one, because I know it wasn't necessarily a given that you were going to do that. And it was really clear the advocacy and the passion that is shared around the council for that issue. So that's really appreciated by ACRE. And the evidence that you were presented around the return on investment that you get from your natural heritage fund and your environment initiative fund, those are really significant in our community and they make such a difference. And I don't think your assessment of return on investment even included volunteers, and that's actually a massive part of what actually that funding enables. And Shepherd is one of our prolific volunteers, or very much involved in the community, doing a lot of work that's is inevitably supported or is supported by the Regional Council and the funding that you provide. So ACRE is in support of your long-term plan primarily, and we are here to engage with you and build relationships. I know that Rachel has invited Councillor Mayer into an event soon in June, which is cool. And I know Craig is going to invite, Craig is going to invite you, that's right, into seeing some water quality aspects in your area. So on the ground, and that's the kind of thing we want to do. We've had a few meetings with Pamela recently, which has been really good. So it's all about relationships. So in summary, we just encourage your support, your ongoing support of Te Huia, and we fully support your investment and increased investment into biodiversity. And I'll just give Shepherd an opportunity to share a little bit about his work in the education space.
Ko tāpea te maunga, ko rangataki te awa, ko Ngāti Manua te iwi, ko he parata ki ngā hau, kia ora tātou. So part of the education with our tamariki today is there's more involvement out there. I have to thank Regional Council for that, with Enviro schools, working with, who's no longer here, Bruno David. He's the guy that actually got me in touch with our creeks and our streams, so I'm really strongly involved with that. Waikato we're just about to create. I like to create the space with one single hat, but these days I've been wearing a lot of different hats, like to hit you right on the mark, which I'm keen to have. And part of this journey has been the storytelling. So this here is 10 years of my research within our environments, right? And it's called Matariki and Climate Change. So right now we're trying to involve mātauranga and what that looks like in our environment. And already we are working with a lot of the maraes around the ropu, the kite, right, up into the sky, pātikitiki, weaving in and out of the community, sovereignty, tino rangatiratanga, stars. Now there's 9 stars in here, right? And they were close to Auckland. If you head out just to the edge of Hamilton, you might get to see those 9 stars, right? The twist of wood. So this is Pohutu Kawakawa that I found at Hiwa Beach. Now, normally when we see something on the beach, we take a while to acknowledge it. But because I've been learning all this kaupapa with the community, I just grabbed it. And that night I carved it to Kawakawa. It's this natural state. When I get lonely, I blow whistle to the wind. All right? Little kaupapa there. And then our greenstone, right? So a stone starts as a rock, and it heads its way through the veins of Papatūānuku, all the way back to the ocean before it's encrusted into sand. A little stone. One big boulder to the stone to the sand. And this is the type of indication that I've been teaching recently as we add on future moving forward. But what I wanted to say was, can we please keep those fundings going for those smaller groups out there, because it's an educational purpose and a tool for our tamariki. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Right, Councillor Downard, would you like to thank our presenters? Oh, just microphone. Yeah.
Thank you, Anna and Shepherd, for coming and presenting here, that personal passion that comes with, you know, rather than just submit us in there, here it brings it to the table. So thank you very much for presenting.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Isaac. All right, we now have Susan Lund, who I understand is in person, online. Sorry, what? Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Did you?
Yeah, just very quickly.
Yeah.
I wanted to, they've gone out the door. I really wanted to recognise the work that they've done, and particularly I wanted to recognise Anna's efforts to reinvigorate ACRE. And that lineup that they now have of membership is a major enhancement. And the fact that they're blending, you know, the aspects of mātauranga and science, bringing it all together. There's been a major rejuvenation, and it's down to Anna.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. All right, so we have now Sue Lund and Lauren Boyle, both online. And this is page 713 of your agenda packs. They are representing the Planetary Accounting Network. Over to you, Sue. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning and kia ora katoa, ko Sue Lund tōku ingoa. It's lovely to be with you this morning, and I really enjoyed the previous presentation as well, and I think ours segues well into that because our presentation is also about science and the environment. The Planetary Accounting Network is a charity. Our purpose is to help people use science to make informed decisions for the environment. And I'm joined by Lauren Boyd as well today, who you can see on the screen. PAN is actually a fully remote organisation, but Lauren and I actually just based over the hill from you in Tauranga, so we're part of the Golden Triangle with you. Could I have the next slide, please? The reason that we made this submission to you is because we really applaud the Council's vision and purpose, but we understand the challenges in achieving parallel goals and where the measurements of success can be quite separate and you are almost always certainly facing trade-offs in your decision making. We've connected with a lot of councils in New Zealand and internationally, and the challenges are almost always the same. Could you have the next slide, please? We've read your long-term consultation documents, the action plans and the climate action roadmap, and we can see that you have a myriad of measures, metrics and targets. And the issue we see where we work with councils is always the same, is that the metrics and targets don't help answer perhaps what are the really hard questions about how does a council balance economic and environmental pressures when they are so intertwined. And the metrics don't help answer perhaps the really hard questions about at what point do you actually know that you've achieved a healthy environment? Is it a 10% increase in green spaces or protection of however many hectares of native forestry? Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the council, we admired your link into the Sustainable Development Goals and the planetary boundaries. You had great documents to read, actually. They were a real pleasure to read. And we saw your focus on science and working with nature and science to support good decision making. And we too believe that there needs to be strong focus on science and environmental outcomes at the council table. So next slide, please. So I'm going to pass to my colleague Lauren, who's going to explain to you what planetary accounting actually does and how it can assist in decision making.
Thanks, Sue. Kia ora koutou. We saw the Planetary Boundaries Framework in your Climate Action Roadmap, and that's recognised as the gold standard for environmental sustainability. It highlights the importance that we need to think beyond climate change and carbon to broader environmental impacts, including waste, biodiversity, water consumption, things like that. Next slide, please. So at PAN, we use a framework called Planetary Accounting that translates these limits into the scales that we make decisions. We can use it to look at the impacts of products, lifestyles, businesses, and in this case, regions. Planetary accounting translates critical global environmental limits, the planetary boundaries, into an accountancy framework which compares impacts to these limits. It aligns with other global frameworks such as the SDGs and donated economics. Next slide. And just a bit about us, we're a membership-based organisation and a not-for-profit charitable trust based mostly down in Wanaka, but here as well. And these are just some of our partners in our network, and we're working with some really great partners and brands and businesses both in NZ and internationally to apply planetary accounting to support a whole lot of decision making. Next slide, please. So what does planetary accounting look like for regions and cities? It's really about simplifying and synthesizing data, and it's not a cookie cutter approach. It can be used in many different ways, just like carbon accounting can. It brings existing metrics in your strategy into a central set of indicators to help track progress of the strategy as a whole and at a glance, distilling various reporting metrics into your core indicators and evaluates the impacts of various decisions from strategies or policies or projects. So it's really useful and flexible. And the application is bespoke to the specific needs of that region or city, and it's not about redoing any great work done to date, but adding context to that work. It starts to give you an understanding of how good is good enough when we're talking about environmental impacts based on the science. So then moves to co-designing targets and interventions, modelling progress, and then you can use this information to update any interventions or actions. Next slide. Just flick through really quickly, but these are just some of the examples of work that we've done to date. So we've worked with Ōtepoti Dunedin, and the next steps for them are linking councillor decisions to key outcomes and looking at digitising some of the data to make it really easy for different stakeholders to use the framework in day-to-day operations. Slide. And then this is just another one, Region Melbourne, a little bit different. It's a grassroots initiative, but they've got a really cool interactive tool that they've set up so communities can, I guess, get a real feel of what this looks like and understand what's going on for their city and how far and how fast they need to go to make change. Next slide. So Waikato, you've already got a really great climate action roadmap. So in your case, we would love to be able to strengthen the breadth of environmental metric and action and help you put this into context in a way that's meaningful and supports you to make sound science-based decisions that help support sustainable development. And at PAN, we see planetary accounting assessments as the crystal ball every organisation and decision maker should have, defines just how far and how fast environmental action needs to be, enabling decision makers to rapidly test scenarios and roadmaps against these outcomes and create a platform for innovative and transformative change. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. I have time if there's any questions. Councillor Nicol.
Kia ora, and thank you, Sue and Lauren, for making a submission and coming to the hearings. Really appreciate that. We certainly did put the planetary boundaries image into that document with the climate action roadmap on purpose, hoping to mature our approach over time to become more holistic. It's the how good is good enough is the question that you've raised, because I think we do get into the habit of just thinking the environment's screwed, anything helps, but if you don't know at what point you've actually achieved something, you can spend a lot of time on inefficient things. So is there anything else you'd like to share in regards to your work with entities in New Zealand that we might recognise, just to help us understand how this is taking off? Thank you.
Absolutely. The work with regional councils and city councils is to develop that that one image where you can see at a glance where your impacts fall within the planetary boundaries, and so it can be used to make decisions about trade-offs. So you can do a scenario in there. So you could work out that a project you're looking like may have a big impact on one area of the planetary boundaries, but also an unintended consequence on another. So it helps that decision making process. The other elements that you might be interested is that we also do a lot of work with agricultural providers of products. And so it's helping them just give metrics for their farmers, but also for consumers, so that consumers can see that information and make decisions as well. So we have a strong role in that education side as well, to help the community and society understand the consequences of decisions as well. Did you want to add anything to that, Lauren?
I think just that it's a great way to, I guess, see hotspots and help target your focus. And it never has to be perfect. Can definitely be a staged approach of, doing a few and then moving on and adding, I guess, layers as you get more data, because we know that there's some data sometimes available, and things to collect later. And yeah, we're sort of happy to work with whatever there is really to get people going on the journey. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Marr, and then I'll get you to wrap it up.
Yeah, so thank you very much for your presentation. Just for my clarity, so is this a product that we would purchase from you?
The way our model works is so that we can do the education work and the research and development around the planetary boundaries application. Yes, we do charge the councils for the services, so that we can keep going with our charitable work.
Okay, and you did mention farmers accessing this information, etc. Is that something they would go through your company with a portal, or it's freely available?
The work that we're doing at the moment is with the sort of the industrial or the food producers who the farmers feed into, how the data flow goes up into the producer or the exporter of the product. So then the farmers see it that way. But you might have been asking me if the farmers could see the information, that the work that we would do with the council, and yes, that would be what we would recommend. The Regen Melbourne image is really cool. You just go into it and you click on it, and you can see exactly at a glance which areas are impacted, where the say water quality might be an issue, or where carbon is an issue. So yes, that would be the aim I would have
Yeah.
what we would encourage for a council, because you want your stakeholders to have visibility of actions and outcomes.
Yeah, we certainly do. Yeah, once again, thank you very much for your report.
Thank you for the opportunity
you.
to present.
Great. All right, we'll move on to our next presenter. So we've got Annette Hill speaking for Carolyn Hill. This is the submission on page 184 of your agenda packs.
All right,
Welcome,
everyone.
Annette.
Thank you. This is my first time being at council, and I'm here very last minute, so I might not be quite as articulate as my daughter might have been. She is attending an environmental hearing in Auckland, and that's been held up, as often these things are. She uses a te huia for travel, and as do our whānau. So we're very passionate about rail travel, having had the privilege in our lives of living in countries where there's an amazing rail networks. I read recently, and I'm sure you know as Hamilton people, that Hamilton is the fastest growing city in New Zealand. The Waikato Times front page article this morning reported Hamilton as the city of the future. How can Hamilton be a city of the future without a public rail network? I have a dream. So I'm just an ordinary citizen. My past work has been as a doctor. I was a family doctor. I retired recently. And my experience of life is very much with, in my last part of my career, of people growing older, as we all are growing older, and with people with disability. So I know a little bit. I want to tell you a story, because stories matter. A while back, I had a young woman, very disabled, in an electric wheelchair, unable really to speak. Her movements were all over the place. But her eyes glowed when her family were able to say she was able to easily get to Auckland on the te huia. So for those of us who are able-bodied and maybe younger, we don't understand those stories, but those are real stories out there. I've attended the recent meeting about the te huia and appreciated being able to be there. I'm aware, growing older myself, as we all are growing older, that we lose our competence as we get older. And in particular, we lose our competence to be able to drive, to be able to be confident, even if we can still drive by the doctor's orders. We lose our competence because we find traffic stressful. And if you're younger and find Auckland traffic not stressful, well, good on you. The time will come when it's really stressful. And so many people report that being able to take a train to Auckland to be able to see their whānau, to be able to go to an event, or just to do some little touristy trip for the day, which broadens their lives rather than narrowing their lives, is a great gift. So along with my family, we strongly support the Waikato Regional Council, pushing for the retention of the te huia. The loss of a train network will be enormous for our future and for our kids who travel up and down to university or whatever they do, to be able to do that safely. I believe that train travel is safer than car travel in many ways. You've had people who can speak significantly to you about environmental aspects. I don't need to sort of harp on about that. But we all know that roading has a significant negative environmental impact, and trains don't have that. I only need to think about, and I was impressed at a meeting I was at recently where the amount of pollution that comes from rubber hitting the road from our cars, I had no idea. That's a very significant thing to me. And I think we've got our heads in the sand if we don't believe in the environmental huge damage that's happening around us, and it will not be repaired unless we are forward-minding. I have a dream that one day New Zealand will be networked with passenger trains all over the place. We talk about the Golden Triangle. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have trains between here and there? And I know it takes financial commitment, but we're talking about people like you and me being able to benefit by something that really works well, the timetable schedule works well. People talk about being able to use buses. Buses are very difficult for elderly people to get off and on. They're difficult for disabled people to get off and on. And I understand that many buses actually will not, intercity buses will not cope with people with wheelchairs, for instance. They don't have that capacity. So, you know, these things are really important to consider when we sit in this powerful position that you guys do here. And roads have all these kinds of hidden costs, don't they, under the surface costs, which are paid for by us, the taxpayer, as opposed to a fare by the train. And whether that's factored in or not, you know, I don't think it is factored in. We sort of subsidise the road through our taxes, but we sort of pay a fare when we go to Auckland on the train, and that's all cool. I also think strongly that any trial of anything needs to run its course. It's not honourable and it lacks integrity for a trial to be just given up on. If you do a medical trial, you don't just say, oh, damn it, you know, we don't want to do this anymore, it's costing us a bit much, or it's whatever. You would only stop a trial if there was major impact on the person. And so, you know, I would strongly push that there should be the continuation of the trial. If you've ever taken children on a visit, travel anywhere, a little bit long distance, it doesn't take too long before they need to use the toilet or they want to have food. To be on a train where that's easy is such a good thing. I think I've probably said enough, so thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Any quick questions? No. Angela, did you want to?
Oh, yeah.
her?
Sorry, I
her
missed
break.
your name.
It's Annette Hill.
Annette, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming in to speak to us. I would say that you were very eloquent. So thank you. You made your points very clearly, and I appreciate the storytelling behind what you've shared as well. Often we do lose sight of why we do what we do, and it is for people. So yeah, thank you for that. I just had a quick question. In our long-term plan with Te Huia, we are looking at future service improvements and renewal of rolling stock. Now, in particular, the renewal of the rolling stock would enable that accessibility that is currently there just to be increased so much more with roll-on, roll-off. So instead of using the hoists, it would enable everyone just to be able to walk rather than a giant step up. So yeah, just interested in hearing your perhaps support for that increased investment in
I think it's great.
Accessible rolling stock.
Yeah, I think it's great, but I think it needs to be put out there. You know, people need to know in the community that actually can do that, because unless somebody finds that out, so it needs to be marketed well. So to be able to take, you know, you as bikes, for instance, to Auckland, know that you can do that on the train, it's a really good thing. So I'd encourage just really good marketing for who is responsible.
Great. Thank you very much, Annette. All right, we'll go to our next presenter, which is John Lawson. I understand John is online. Yes.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, John. Good to hear you again.
Thank you. Yeah,
So this is, sorry, this is page 163 on your agendas.
Yeah, I put in submissions on a few things, including transport questions, and I was interested to see the presentation about the cats and the kiwis, and we've been doing trapping here in Whangaroa since 2009 on a fairly serious scale, and actually having some impact. So we're noticing that we are getting more birds in the area, but it's only a tiny part of the whole region, and there are many parts of the region which don't enjoy that level of pest control, and indeed it could be improved even here. And I did go up north of Whangaroa Harbour yesterday and saw a couple of cats running across the road, which are quite likely those wild cats that we see so often, and it is a major problem. I know from living at Karakuriki for a while, on this side of Hamilton that people do drop off their cats, and it's an issue to sort out. So I welcome the fact that a larger number of us supported increasing the rate for biodiversity than any other option that you offered. So thank you for asking that question. On transport, I agree with the previous speaker, Annette, that we need Te Huia. She didn't mention much about bicycles, but it's very awkward to carry a bicycle on intercity. And the other option, apart from driving, is to use the main roads, which aren't at all suitable for cycling. The ministry tried to work out a cycle route between Auckland and Hamilton and didn't really find anywhere that was suitable enough to endorse put on their cycling routes. And even the route that comes down from the Tuako area ends up using a ferry which needs to be booked across Whangaroa Harbour. So again, it's not at all a suitable route for cycles, whereas Te Huia does provide that opportunity. One of the things that I was puzzled about was the idea of having people walk. Usually the city council has looked at a few hundred metres as being the distance to get to a bus stop, but you're looking at a much greater distance, and I can't say that I know anyone who walks that far to get to a bus stop. 5 kilometres is quite a way, and I just wonder where that came from. And it seems to me that really in these days we ought to be looking at buses as being a solution to climate change rather than the social service which it was looked at as being when subsidies started. And if we look at that, then we all benefit from the changes in reduction in carbon which goes into the atmosphere. And I'm glad to see that at last the region has got some electric buses running, if only to Cambridge and in the Taupo area. So that's good. But I hope that we'll be getting a lot more, and that we'll be getting buses which most people can use. Because one of the problems is that quite a number of areas are growing quite rapidly, including Whangaroa. I think we're down for a doubling of our population over the next few decades, and already there are tailbacks at Dinsdale roundabout at peak hours. And if you double the traffic through that roundabout, then you're going to need some expensive solutions to it, unless you can get a fair number of people to be using public transport or working from home or whatever. So I hope you'll be looking at the budget in those terms, also looking at it in terms of the proportion of people who don't use cars or don't want to use cars, because roughly 5% of the population don't have cars. And very often the proportion of the budget from the transport budget of the regional and district councils doesn't reflect that, and certainly doesn't reflect the fact that there are many more people who would prefer to use their cars a lot less, either because driving takes up time, and if you're, well, particularly on Te Huia, but also on buses, you can actually use that time usefully rather than just be paying attention to what's in front of you on the road as you drive all the time. So there are many reasons to be improving support for public transport. So basically those were the things that I wanted to say. So thank you for listening to me, and happy to take questions if anyone wants.
Thank you for that, John. Any quick questions for John? Councillor Strange.
Yeah, hello again, John. Yeah, thank you for your submission and your real passion for your area that you live in as well, out in Raglan. Yeah, I appreciate that you've submitted on a number of areas, and yeah, that you presenting to us today as well really helps to fill out yeah, our knowledge as well. So yeah, appreciate your time today, and yeah, thank you for your submission.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, John. All right, we've got, up next, we've got Judy McDonald. This is on page 460 of your agendas. Judy.
Hello. I do have printed copies of what I'm about to say, so they could just be handed around afterwards. As I stated in my written submission, as a long-term pedestrian advocate, I support increased funding and support for buses, both within and between Waikato towns and cities. And I am in total agreement with the Regional Council's already stated support for continuing with the 5-year trial of Te Huia. Just to comment about the bus services first, I support the proposed strategy for transitioning the passenger transport fleet to zero emissions. Within towns and cities, public transport is the most effective way of getting foot traffic into retail areas. And with zero emission buses, those areas can benefit without having the negative effects of noisy and polluting diesel emitting buses parked outside their doors. But this submission is primarily about Te Huia. As a member of the group that organised the May 4th meeting to support the Te Huia service, it was incredibly heartening to see the level of enthusiasm for the train and the repeated confirmations that it's not merely a commuter service, important though that is for a lot of people. The audience had a good proportion of disabled Hamiltonians and older people who made it very clear that for some of them, Te Huia is the only viable means of transport to reach friends and relatives in Auckland. That doubtless also applies going the other way, even though the timing is not as good as it is from Hamilton to Auckland. But there are people who, because of their disabilities or because of their age, are not confident driving. They can't access buses. Buses are not an option for many people, and they don't solve the road congestion issues that we're dealing with. There's often long and unpredictable delays in reaching your destination. For anyone trying to get to an important appointment in Auckland, it's actually safer to go the night before. It is so difficult to actually predict what the timing is going to be like. Very minor holdups on the road can result in ridiculous delays. A particular example, our own family, was the chaos that resulted earlier this year when there was a major sports event in Auckland and the Pink concert. Road travel turned out to be a nightmare. In some cases, it took people over 6 hours to get from Hamilton to Auckland. They missed all or part of the event that they'd paid for, and they paid large fees to attend in some cases. And train travel, a train service which actually operated as Te Huia will in due course, one hopes, at sensible times to be able to get people to and from Auckland on the same day, that completely avoids that kind of mess. The ongoing protests from some sections of the community and the government about the subsidy cost for Te Huia, a figure of $90 per ticket is regularly bandied about, take no account of the massive subsidy that applies to road travel by virtue of the cost of road building, which is paid for from taxes. The item that you'll find on the back of the handout is actually from one of the latest Listener magazines, which notes that the Waikato Expressway cost $2.4 billion to build, an average cost per kilometre of $23.5 million. Parts of it are already falling apart and need repair. 1 kilometre of that road would fund Te Huia for 5 years. And as was pointed out by people at the meeting on May the 4th, the total cost of the expressway would fund Te Huia for the next 400 years. The direct costs of roading also take no account of the deaths and serious injuries our roads cause every year. In 2022, 73 people died on our Waikato roads, and in 2023, 67 of them died. At the cost of a statistical life, which Waka Kotahi and other government agencies currently estimate at 12.5 million, and that's probably an underestimate, roads have cost the Waikato region 912 million and 837 million in those 2 years, respectively. That would also fund a lot of train subsidies. The injuries resulting in long hospital stays and ongoing social and financial support are even larger. Waikato Regional Council's own records state that between 2009 and 2018, there were 3,097 serious injuries in road accidents, averaging out at around 345 a year. Figures are presumably similar for the last 6 years. We need safe, reliable public transport. Te Huia provides it, and as one of the previous speakers noted, it is in no way fair to be terminating a trial several years before it was due to terminate, especially considering that that trial began when there were massive COVID restrictions and the service could not run as was intended. Thank you.
So Nicole?
I don't believe I have any questions because that was quite a summary. Thank you. But I want to thank you for the measured and passionate way together at the same time too, because I could see councillors really listening to what you were saying, and just in general the highlighting of how Te Huia has that resilience and that reliability aspect from real life examples that we've had recently. And you know, coupled with what we hear from other people around the visions for what they have. So yeah, I have no questions. I just want to say thank you. That was a really good submission and really good hearing submission.
Thank you. As I say, there are hard copies if people are interested in them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Judy. All right, we'll now go to Sandra, if you want to move ahead. Marcus wasn't up until 12:30, but we, as I understand, you're speaking on his behalf. So since you're in the room, if you're happy to come forward, that would be great. So this is a submission from Peninsula Pastoral Company, and we have Sandra Goudie in the chamber to speak to this. Councillors, this is page 1047 of your submissions pack.
I will provide a re-typed up version later on in the day.
Thank you for that. Welcome, Sandra.
So are we still in the morning or in the afternoon?
Afternoon now.
So good afternoon, councillors, and kia ora katoraina. I see you there. And firstly, I'd just like to congratulate you. It was actually quite surprising and quite refreshing to see some proactive deletion of costs there in your LTP summary, and I'm very pleased to see that. And especially when I don't see them as core responsibility of the regional council, because in my mind the regional council was essentially a pest and weed control entity with flood protection works, and that's about the only asset I think you really have, isn't it? It's the flood protection works. I'm not aware,
but not the only responsibility, of course.
And so I think it's probably time to add Te Waka and your regional development fund to that list, because I do wonder with Te Waka, it's been 8 to 9 years as an entity, and I just wonder how long it takes for them to really work out how they make a return on their investment. So this is all about the difference between must-dos and nice-to-haves, and that was a phrase first coined by TCDC and now being used nationwide that I see. But people are slowly waking up to the sheer paucity of funding available in our communities, because no matter what you try to do, the money only comes from one pocket, and that's ratepayers, people who own property and pay rates. In some cases, that rate cost is passed on to tenants, be it residential or commercial, but in the end, it's ratepayers, property owners that are paying. And so I think while the core responsibility has always been to really pest and weed control from a regional council, which is quite a simplistic way of putting it, but essentially that's what it's supposed to be, it seems to have taken a back seat to what has now become tantamount to a charitable organisation, paid for off the backs of landowners. And I say that because apart from the the Te Huia train submitters, the three prior to that, we all had their hand up for money. And so this increase in charitable funding comes from any landowner with property over 20 hectares and is then given to lots of other people to do stuff. And I'm talking about page 11 and 12 here. The amount of organisations that set up just to access the money that you get from the ratepayers, these property owners, is astounding. And it's so easy to do, and it's so easy to rort it. And the best, and we all know that the best and most effective groups are those that do it freely, give of their own time and in many cases of their own money to do that job. And it's also been well researched that the best protectors of the land and our biodiversity are property owners. And Marcus Ward is a 4 to 5 generation person, and they've got with a big property up there at north of Colville. They've got thousands of hectares of bush left untouched for all of those generations. So why on earth do you want to penalise his family for taking care of the land for all of this time and all of those other property owners just like him? It's astounding, really. And there is no biodiversity loss from the Thames Coromandel district. In fact, it would be the reverse. There'd be a gain. And the rest of the region doesn't necessarily stack up as well. So there's no justification there. And there's only a rates remission for having all of this bush on your land if you ring fence it under an authority or some other entity. And that makes no difference whatsoever, was nothing positive in doing so. The only other remission of bush on land is if you're Māori. And then there's lots of rate remissions options in your remissions options paper, if that's the case, but not for anybody else. So any funds are better utilised by property owners themselves with far better and greater outcomes in real terms than either the regional council, some group, or other entity with a handout will ever accomplish in the long term. And we all know that it's local authorities and government agencies that don't necessarily know how to use money all that well. So if you're going to start handing out money as a result of this biodiversity fund, you might want to start looking at not giving out money. Provide pest and weed equipment only. No administration, no consultation, no free lunches, no labour, no Marae-based social enterprises. Get back to basics because it's become well and truly out of hand. If I asked for a list of recipients, how much they got paid, what it was they did for every single dollar that left from this charitable organisation for all of this so-called biodiversity activity, could you give me that list? Could you honestly put your hand on heart and say you can provide that list? All those people that got money, everything that they did, and what were the outcomes from that? I don't think you'd be able to do that. I don't think you'd be able to account for all that money, be quite honest. So, as I say, you should only be giving out pest and weed equipment and leave the rest to work it out for themselves. There's far too much hui, far too much hui. And as for housing, I have seen that being talked about for years and money spent on the hui for that for years. Time to stop it. So page 13, public transport, no use at all to the Coromandel, though we have been the recipients of funding from Regional Council, which I'm particularly grateful for on the premise that we do need public transport, but it's just unaffordable. It will always be one of the most costly and unaffordable options that we just don't have, really, which is a shame because there are many people that do need it. So I have some sympathy for that. Page 22, farm plans, staunchly opposed as a source of money under the pretext of monitoring. Seriously, if the activity is permitted, then no monitoring should be required. Farm plan implementation from someone who has no connection to the land. Get real. And actually, so you've got farmers that have to do these farm plans and then have regional councils come in and look all over it and assess it and tell a farmer whether the farm plan's approved or workable, or I don't know how you do all that. I mean, seriously, naff off. That's all I've got to say. I mean, it's an incredible violation of rights and property, and yet another breach of the Treaty of Waitangi, a case for a tort of nuisance and prejudicial bias of minority. Just incredible stuff, these things. I don't know how it ever got past the gate.
Just wanting, do you want to wrap up your submission so we?
No, I can wrap it up because I've only got a couple of things left. And so it's just more of how to continue to grow the funding pie without really assessing the necessity of the requirement in real terms. And so I'm probably just going to finish off with, so back to the beginning. You have made a start. I think it's be brave and keep looking for real outcomes and less bureaucracy, less hooey, and real KPIs for the monies being spent, because I know you know all about that stuff. So proper scrutiny over where monies that are being given out have been used for the purpose intended. And I think that's critically important. There is far too much money going out the door with you not really knowing how and where it's being spent.
Thank you. I've got, I can't remember who was, Councillor Smith and then Councillor Mahuta.
Thank you, Sandra, for your submission on behalf of Marcus Ward. I know members of the Ward family from Colville. I'm not sure, well, I don't believe I know Marcus, but I have been left wondering with the use of the word I in your presentation, which was his submission and which was yours?
Gave me absolute largesse because we all think the same. We're all part of that same area. We're all from Colville.
Right. Okay. No, that I just wanted to make sure.
We're all family.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mahuta.
Just really interested in your background and expertise because for my term on council, we've been trying to do pest management in a more responsive way with community in the peninsula. And for the life of me, we haven't been able to arrive at that point. Even people doing their own work on their own land. Do you have any suggestions?
No, we do our own work on our own land. We look after our pests and we look after our weeds, and we do that. We take conscious responsibility for that. We love the biodiversity that exists on our land, and we don't want any interference or help from anybody else because largely, if anything happens, we're on our own anyway. So, but no, I wouldn't invite a council onto my property willingly. And in actual fact, when council did ask to come onto our property, I said no.
Okay, thank you. You're one of
Thank
the few
you.
groups in the Coromandel not seeking our support. Thank you.
Thank you.
And look, can I just put that into context as to why? And it's because it's an overbearing regulatory authority that just has no concept or understanding or respect for property rights, in my opinion.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I appreciate you coming and speaking to Marcus's submission. All right.
And I
councillors?
means Marcus as well. Thank you.
All right, councillors, that's the last submission in our morning section. So we are now going to adjourn until 1 p.m. Thank you.